I, Andrew Gibbons, have once again, and it's always good and exciting and fun and enlightening, I have Rebecca Norton with me again. So Rebecca, you're good at this in one or two sentences. Who are you? Where are you from?
Hi, yep, I'm Rebecca Norton from Sense of Direction.
Well, that was quick. Good job. I'm ready for you every time. We've got the Johari Window on the screen here. We've done a recording this morning, earlier, of a general sense, Johari Window. What's it all about? How might you use it? How useful is it? And we came to the conclusion broadly that it's a very useful instrument. It's best when it's made really specific. The more you can narrow and drill down to a very particular, very specific, very precise, for instance, something to get better at. In my case, I keep reflecting on the need not to, or the must not to interrupt so often. The more general it is, the less value, the more specific, the better, that it's dynamic, it's contextual. We won't go into all that because we've done that. Here we're going to look at it in the context of coaching. So where the coach is working with someone to help them through these visuals. I suppose we better explain them very briefly, Rebecca. How would you explain them? No doubt better than when I did it for the first recording.
Yeah, so like we said, we've got the two axes. We've got known to ourselves and we've got known to others. So we've got known to ourselves and known to others, which is the open area. We've got known to others but not known to ourselves, which is our blind spot. And we've got not known to others but known to ourselves, which is our hidden area, and then not known to ourselves and not known to others, which is the unknown area. So although on the graphic it's showing them as equal size squares, this is what we were discussing last time, is that actually they can move and change shape, well, change size, sorry, depending on the context and the situation and the skill that we're talking about as well, potentially.
Yeah, what looks a very one-dimensional, unexciting, well, it's nice colours though, what I'm looking at, pastel shaded, sorry for listeners. What looks very one-dimensional is not, as you say, you can overlay it with context, with specific issue, and it's a dynamic process, it's moving around. These are not equally sized boxes ever. So, yeah. and you know, so there's lots of things to get into here. I'm not going to try and lead on this one because you've thought about it, I think, a bit more than I in terms of the coaching elements. How would you see a coach using this on a one-to-one basis most effectively?
I think it's a really useful tool to help people touch on things that's perhaps a little bit sensitive. So we've got this model as a medium there. So rather than me just asking somebody, oh, what are your blind spots? We can say, you know, most people have areas that you're not known about or whatever. So can you think of any that you might not be aware of? But also I think it gives us some structures. So I like the graphic that you'd sent beforehand as well, is about how do we identify what our blind spots are? Obviously, if we don't know, then we don't know. So how do we know? So it might be then, you know, so as a coach, we can ask people, how can you improve your knowledge around your blind spot? And it might be things like they keep getting feedback on a particular thing, or perhaps they're encountering a similar situation over again and they keep coming up against a particular person. So does that indicate then that perhaps there's something going on that we're maybe not aware of? So asking other people for feedback, or sort of reflecting on the situations of, we keep coming up against the same thing here, so what's going on? So I think that can be a really useful tool as a coach then.
Absolutely. And the more I look at this, the more I think about it, the more practical applications I see. And it's very accessible. You don't need to go through a whole load of theory. You don't need to go through a battery of tests and tick boxes. It's ready to run. Off you go. As long as you've got a broad understanding of it, because we should always work within our competencies, then I think this is something that is very accessible and useful. I know you like the blind spot. And I guess what I'm thinking always about the blind spot, not known to self, known to others, things that others see and you don't. There is a lot of value there. And from a coaching perspective, I suppose it's about perception too, isn't it? Yeah. Because for it to be not known to self, we're going on what someone reports to us. They actually might be telling us fibs. They might, for instance, be thinking, well, I'm going to make out I don't know about this because it hurts too much for me to reflect on the fact that I never listen to anybody, or that I'm a very intolerant person. So I'm going to say, all right, that's how people see me, is it? So we're working off self-reporting. Oh, but we don't have to be. I suppose you could exploit the blind spot using stakeholders. Well, Rebecca, unknown to you, I've been talking to 18 people that know you, and they all think you're a complete pain in this respect. So I wouldn't do that, of course. All I'm saying is you can engage other people's perspectives to help people through a blind spot, either in an interactive way, get some documented feedback, or get people to engage in conversations. Gosh, I'm talking myself into lots of ways I can use this.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on something there that's really important. I think as coaches, this is where we can help people to identify what's valuable feedback and what's not, you know, and maybe how to ask for that feedback. Because I was working with a client once, and from what she was telling me, she was constantly asking for feedback from everyone. And I didn't think that was a particularly helpful thing to do, because why first of all, you know, do you want that amount of feedback? And two, you like you said, you do need to be selective who you ask for feedback from, because some people will have agendas. So I think as coaches, we can help people to identify where or how to get feedback in a constructive way. Yeah,
and some people see it as self-indulgent. I've encountered that over my many years. Some people get fed up with people coming back and saying, how do you see me in this respect? You know, how do you think I can improve? And it might not be the culture of the place. People around here don't do that sort of thing. So why are you? And I like what you're saying. And it's making me think there's another way in which a coach can seek to open up the blind spot area, not known to self, known to others. And that is not using stakeholders and others, but to just work on the person in front of them. So Rebecca, we could ask a lot of people their view about you in relation to this issue that we're talking about specifically, but let's work on you. Let's do what we can to get you to become more aware by asking yourself more questions, by being more reflective, by doing the things for yourself maybe you've chosen not to do. Oh.
Yeah, I like that, actually. That's quite a good way, so we can help them, like you say, yeah, the question, it's a raising awareness, isn't it? So I think this is all about raising self-awareness as a tool.
It absolutely is. And for its simplicity, there's a huge amount of value here. Now, we touched on this when we looked at the model in the general sense, and I think it's particularly worth raising now, looking at the use of the Johari window in a coaching practice. We ought not, in my view, we, the whole world, we ought not to be unaware that by raising awareness, as you say, we can cause discomfort. And I think as a coach, we ought to take responsibility for working within our genuine parameters of competence, and also taking responsibility for the emotions and feelings that this could generate.
Yeah, very much so, because this is often a blind spot. It's a blind spot because it's quite a sensitive area to touch on, and that can be, I suppose that could fit into a few different areas. Actually, maybe it's in the hidden area because it's a sensitive subject, or in the unknown because it's like, oh, I ain't going there, I'm not touching on that one. So you're right. So I think as coaches, it is really important to put some boundaries around that and discuss beforehand with the person, you know, some of the things that I've discussed with other coaches about asking people how much they want to be challenged. And that might be different session to session. You know, they may have had a really bad week and they really do not need any challenge. They need that supportive environment. So we aren't going to do anything that's going to be pushing them this session.
Two things that makes me think about contracting and ethics. I think you shouldn't just spring this on a coaching client. Hey, I thought we'd do this today. Oh, yeah, this looks interesting. Oh, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to talk about this. So it should be something which is contracted. And we shouldn't say, well, this might cause you to feel deeply upset. You become massively anxious about this. We don't want to overplay it, but I think we should make people aware that it could take them out of what you've called their comfort zone. Yes, it could. It might well not, but it could. And I think ethically, we should not play around with things we don't have the capability to manage, and to manage in the well-being context of the client. So no one should pick this up and use it knowing that it could go somewhere that they can't control.
Yes, you don't want to open Pandora's box on this one, really, do you?
Oh, and that isn't a deterrent to people. I think it's about saying this tool called the Johari window in a coaching context has a lot of value. Make sure, so far as you can, because ironically, I thought this when you were talking there, ironically, the blind spot could be in the coach. The coach could be having a blind spot or be in the unknown area in the use of this tool. So So I don't want anyone saying, well, Andrew, I'm suing you because I saw you and Rebecca's video on this. I went and used it, and I've lost my client who got deeply upset and says no wants anything to do with me again. It's been posted all over LinkedIn about how appalling I am. It's all your fault. So that isn't the case. So any coach that uses this should be doing so in the open area, should not have a blind spot about their own competence and capabilities in the use of such an instrument.
This is getting interesting now, isn't it?
That's my liability statement. So I should read it out.
yeah, definitely.
No, sorry, I need to work on this further interruption thing there.
Yeah, I do think I like the idea as a coach that we can help people change the size of these boxes. I think that's the other power in this tool, isn't it? We want people to, if they want to do that, If
they do, and yes, absolutely. The way I see myself using this, because let's keep it very practitioner oriented, is working with someone in an area they're comfortable with to say, what are we absolutely specifically talking about here? Really drilling down to something. And it could be something like asking interested questions. It could be about something like making a point of being more participative, because I immediately think of being less because I'm over, but maybe people feel that they behave in too introverted a way. Introversion, of course, temperament and personality is not just a behavior trait thing. So it's about drilling down to something really specific. And as you say then, action planning. Where do you want to get to in this? So how might each of these quadrants help us? What might be in your blind spot that we can use yourself and others' perspective to open up? What's in the hidden area that you're keeping from others? And are you doing that deliberately? And does that work for you? That's fine. And then what's in the unknown? That's the Pandora's box. What are we going to open up there that we might not even know is going to come popping out of there?
Yeah, and I like on the diagram that you sent before is there's a couple of ways that we can actually delve into that unknown boxes. Some of that will be self-discovery in finding things out for ourselves. Some of it will be what other people can help us find, and some of it will be working together as a team to find that out together. If it's a new team working together, then I think there's opportunity for some really powerful stuff in there. And I think perhaps we've slanted it on a slightly negative side of this.
Yeah.
There's a really positive side of this as well, isn't there? We could, as a shared team thing, we might discover that as a team we've got some wonderful talents and skills that allows us to fast track a project or develop it in a different way than what we thought before. So I think there's definitely a positive spin on this, and I wouldn't want people to like you said, I wouldn't want people to be overcautious. There's some real powerful positive impact.
Yeah, I go with that, and I'm not usually missed in negativity, and I guess I'm just a cautionary note that the power of this tool might not be apparent on first acquaintance. So yeah, a cautionary note, but use this positive tool well. Use it in context, like you say, use it specifically. And I like the fact that you brought in the collective too. Team coaching, everyone's talking about, very few people are actually doing. So collective units could be as relevant to this as others. Maybe that's a bit of a leap forward from my own thinking at the present time, but yes, it's such as its versatility.
Definitely, yeah. I think I think I would encourage people to set some boundaries around this. And like you said, there does need to be some caution about how it's used. So setting some boundaries and some guidelines with your client. And I think what you touched on there is, what do we want out of this? That's really important, isn't it? What are we aiming to do by using this tool?
I think so. And I think where I've come to it recently as a self-diagnostic, from a coaching perspective, it's not a bad thing for a coach, for their own CPD, for their own development, to look at this in relation to themselves. So as a coach, what are my blind spots? That's where I start from, like you. What am I unaware of, and how do I know what I don't know? If you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, all that sort of stuff. So I think as a diagnostic and developmental tool for a coach, and maybe it's best to start to get to know this thing a bit better, to do it on yourself first before you start working with others on it, because that gives you an insight and perspective on it. What is my hidden area? What are the things that I feel in my perception that I know about, the skills I possess, the behavior that I can use that is not evident to others? And why is it there? Why isn't it in the open area? Is it deliberate? Is it just because I don't use it? the Johari window is probably in my hidden area for a long time, just tucked away, unused for a long time. Now it's in the open area. Hey, I don't mind who knows about it. It's out there on the internet. So I think you can use this as a self-diagnostic and increase your awareness in that, and that'll give an insight to use in practice.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And maybe that's a good place to stop, is encourage people to go and do this on themselves first, try it out, and then go and practice with others.
Says Rebecca in a "and finally" statement, and you get the final word.
No, I'm encouraging people go and try it. I think it's an excellent tool that could give a lot of insight into different areas